So you've all probably heard the news that Sony is launching the PlayStation 5 Pro later this year. The initial news came from Tom Henderson back in May of 2023. Then, leaker Moore's Law is dead revealed the full specs for the PS5 Pro, something that I've talked about in our previous PS5 Pro video from March. Then, Tom Henderson confirmed those spec leaks to be correct, and now The Verge is also confirming those specs too. Plus, Sony has recently taken down Moore's Law's video that revealed those PS5 Pro specs. At this point, it cannot get more official than this. The PS5 Pro is happening and everything about it is already known. But should you actually upgrade if you've already got the standard PS5? Well, that's a bit more difficult to answer, as it's not quite a simple yes. So before answering that, I think we should look at what the PS5 Pro brings new to the table. And there are 5 main upgrades here: the CPU improvements, the GPU improvements, the memory enhancements, ray tracing, and then also upscaling. Okay, so I want to start off with the CPU improvements, which is by far the most minor upgrade. The CPU inside the PS5 Pro is identical to the one inside the standard PS5. The only difference being that it runs at a higher 3.85 GHz clock speed as opposed to 3.5, which is a 10% higher clock speed. So essentially, yes, the PS5 Pro's CPU is just an overclocked version of the PS5's chip. Also, it won't always run at that clock speed. Instead, developers will get to pick between a standard CPU mode and this high-frequency CPU mode. What's interesting here is that apparently if a developer chooses this high-frequency CPU mode, then the GPU will get downclocked by 1.5% in order to give the CPU that extra power. So it seems to me that Sony is not giving the PS5 Pro a power supply that's powerful enough to allow both the CPU and the GPU to be pushed to their max level of performance. It's either one or the other, which I find to be a very strange choice. Although, I have to say, a 1.5% drop in GPU performance is not really that significant. Which brings us to the second upgrade, the GPU improvements. Now, this one is getting some substantial upgrades. If we look at the raw GPU compute power, the PS5 has 10.28 teraflops. The PS5 Pro will have 33.5. So on paper, it looks like the PS5 Pro will have 3 times the GPU performance. But in reality, it's not actually that impressive. You see, AMD's RDNA architecture is quite complex, so we cannot really compare the GPUs just based on teraflops like we used to. Sony is aware of this as well, reason why they gave us a precise 45% rendering performance improvement over the PS5. What this means is that if you've got a game that currently runs at 30 FPS, then the PS5 Pro should be able to run it at about 43. And if you've got a game that runs at 40 FPS, like a lot of the recent AAA titles, if you have a VRR-enabled TV, then that game would now run at about 58. Of course, this is not taking into account the other improvements that we're also getting. The next of which being the memory enhancements. With the PS5 Pro, Sony's keeping the same amount of memory like on the PS5 at 16GB, but they are increasing the bandwidth from 448GB per second to 576, which is a significant 28% jump. Not only that, but they're also giving developers more access to the system memory. Specifically, on the current PS5, developers only have access to 12.5GB, as the rest up to 16 were taken by the OS. But now Sony is giving developers 13.7GB, which is quite a considerable increase. Now, I don't really get why this is coming to the PS5 Pro only and not the standard PS5 as well, as this looks to be just optimizations in the way the OS uses the memory. Maybe they'll update a PS5 standard as well in the future, but let's just wait and see. Now, the next improvement is probably the biggest one, and that is when it comes to ray tracing. According to these leaked documents, the improvement is now said to be 3x or even 4x on the PS5 Pro. So what does this mean? Well, currently ray tracing has a pretty significant impact when it comes to the performance of your games. GTA 5, for example, added ray tracing on the PS5 recently, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Reflections on cars look incredibly realistic, even more so when it comes to rain. The difference that ray tracing makes here is just night and day. But it basically kills your performance. Instead of running the game at 60 FPS like you can without ray tracing, simply enabling ray tracing brings it down to 30. So with the PS5 Pro, we should be able to play our games in 60 FPS while also having ray tracing enabled, something that just isn't possible right now, at least not without seriously dropping the resolution. And the last big upgrade of the PS5 Pro is upscaling. Sony has also been developing their own upscaling solution that would compete with Nvidia's DLSS and AMD's FSR, which they're calling PSSR. Now, there is a slight 2 millisecond latency involved when upscaling a 1080p image to 4K. Although apparently this latency is said to be similar to Nvidia's and AMD solutions. And Sony is also working on supporting 8K upscaling, finally bringing 8K to the PS5, something that was plastered on the box ever since its launch, despite never supporting it. So the whole idea of PSSR is that it is a far more effective method of upscaling than the dynamic resolution upscaling that most games are using today. What this means is that PS5 Pro games will target native or PSSR upscaled 4K 60 with ray tracing, something that the current PS5 is just not able to do, except in Astrobot Playroom, which is a demo game.
Oh, and on a separate note, our iPhone 15 giveaway is still going on our Discord. We are now in the voting stage for your wallpaper spec ideas, which ends next week. So if you want to see one of these 10 ideas turn into an actual pack that you can use for yourselves, then place your vote accordingly. Right now, the packs with the most views are Retro Ride, Lost Views, and Half Here. Personally, I think that Half Here is a super unique take on your lock screen, although my favorite still remains Eternal Earth. The link to our Discord is in the description. And this week, we've also launched a gorgeous new pack for wallpapers called Fabulous Forest by Attiv. This features 10 Firewatch-style forest wallpapers, all in some beautiful colors and 8K resolution, so that you can use them on all of your devices. Simply search for wallpapers on the App Store and the Play Store to find our app.
So, having gone through all the 5 main upgrades of the PS5 Pro, should you actually upgrade to it if you already have a PS5? And honestly, that depends. Because you see, even if you buy a PS5 Pro, you'll also need 2 more things to be able to notice an upgrade. Number 1, support in games. And number 2, a good TV. So when it comes to support in games, unlike on a PC where if you swap out the GPU, you'll instantly see the benefits, with a PS5 Pro, similar to the PS4 Pro, developers would need to update their games first. Apparently, Sony will be using a PS5 Pro Enhanced label for games that provide significant enhancements. Think of this as games that significantly bump the frame rate, they improve the fidelity of ray tracing, and then they also take advantage of PSSR. Now, for games that are not enhanced for the PS5 Pro, I do expect a boost mode. So similar to what the PS4 Pro had, where games that had unstable frame rates can run a bit smoother. Although I do not expect a massive upgrade here, other than a few extra frames. And even though Sony has apparently asked developers to get their games ready for the PS5 Pro, at the end of the day, this is still fully in the hands of the developers. I think that when it comes to first-party titles like Spider-Man, Horizon, Gran Turismo, and God of War, we will see some updates. But when it comes to third-party titles, I think those updates may take a very long time to come, or they may never come at all. And it's also worth remembering that because of how small the CPU upgrades are, games that are heavily bound by the CPU may not even see any upgrades whatsoever. And I'm talking about simulation games, or even games like GTA 6 that have a lot of complex traffic, complex weather, and complex population calculations that need to run in the background. This is something that Digital Foundry reported on as well, the fact that we may not see a native 4K 60 mode in GTA 6 on the PS5 Pro. And the second thing you'll need to take advantage of the PS5 Pro's level of performance is, like I said, also a good TV. One that's not just 4K, but also has a high refresh rate and preferably supports VRR2, which does make a big difference for games that do not have a stable frame rate or games that are targeting 120 FPS. Although some PS5 games right now do support 120 FPS, the resolution does take a substantial hit. In some cases, the graphics are downgraded too. And I believe that all of these issues will be fixed with a PS5 Pro thanks to the extra GPU performance and also PSSR. And in case you want to play your games at 120 FPS, my top TV recommendation is the LG G4. It uses LG's latest MLA 2.0 OLED technology with a heatsink as well, so it goes crazy bright at up to 3000 nits, while also supporting a variable 120Hz refresh rate, which is actually higher. That can go up to 144 if you enable that in the settings. And then the LG C4 is also another great option, which doesn't quite go as bright, but it's still bright enough, and it also supports a variable 144Hz refresh rate as well. Of course, Samsung has some great options too, including their latest 8K QLED from 2024, which would be great for those of you who want to take advantage of the PS5 Pro's latest 8K upscaling. Or you could also get an older model. I'm still using my 2020 LG CX, which, yes, well, it is quite dim. It does support 120Hz variable refresh rate as well, and I'm still happy with it, so I don't have any plans to upgrade in the near future. By the way, I've left some affiliate links in the description in case you are thinking of upgrading your TV. Some do have offers, and if you purchase anything using our links, it may save you some money and also support our channel in the process. Now, the PS5 Pro is still set to launch in the holiday period of 2024, so yeah, not long until we'll get our hands on it. So until then, stay tuned to the channel for more updates, and let me know what you guys think about the PS5 Pro. Are you upgrading or not? And feel free to continue the conversation on our Discord as well. Keep in mind, we do have that iPhone 15 giveaway there too. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.